Wow, thank you all for the kind introduction, Glenn and Dave. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I know that I just had to follow, four outstanding legislators. Let's give them another round of applause, please. Tom Newell, Leslie Osborne, and the two senators that were here, they really are the good guys. I will tell you, I get to serve with them. And you've got some others. Representative Osborne, who's here, I don't know if they mentioned she's the Judiciary Chair. She's the first woman to serve as the Chair of Judiciary. I also have Representative Peterson, Floor Leader Peterson, who's the first woman to serve in that position too. And I didn't do it, people talk a lot about the differences between men and women, and I didn't do it because they're women. I did it because they're meaner. And that's why I made them to those appointments. So, in all seriousness, I did want to talk a little bit. When Dave and I first talked about me coming to this event, I wanted to talk a little bit about the legislative process, what we've done in the past year to make Oklahoma a more conservative state, and what needs to be done moving forward. And I think, above all else, if there's one thing I think we can all agree on, is that we cannot continue to wait for the federal government to lead. Whether it's in the areas of health care, education, you name it, the federal government has proven it's essentially ineffective to either make the necessary changes. I still believe that there's going to be reform in the country. It's going to happen at the state level in the halls of the 50 state capitals around the country. But the states have to first act. And there's been a lot of discussion about whether or not they could. When I became Speaker of the House, I was actually elected in 2011 as Speaker designate. So I've gotten a chance to serve in the political operation and then to be sworn in this past year. But, our government is a republic. We are composed of the states, not a national government with the power to rain down. We're a bottom-up organization, if you will. And some people have talked about states' rights like the 10th Amendment for a really long time. And you hear them mention it, and even there have been some that even talk about it doesn't exist anymore, that somehow we're all just a nation, one nation, and we certainly are one nation under God, but we are developed among 50 different states, and that is what we must keep in mind. And the powers that are not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited to it by the states are reserved to the states respectively for the people and by the people. And we must always keep that in mind. When I was elected Speaker, I created the States' Rights Committee. And I know it was the first one in Oklahoma's history. I think it was the first one in the country. And we have seen, I think, come out of that committee real legislation that empowers the states. Now, we've had some trouble getting it through the Senate. Are there any senators still in here? Senator Donald is in here. Have I told you, you all know the difference between a senator and a House member for the most part? Senators confirm the governor's nomination. I've said this before, Senator, get ready. He's one of the good guys, too, for sure. The real difference between House and Senate members, and you met two of our stars. I mean, Leslie Osborne and Tom Newell, they are the future of what I think is the House of Representatives moving in a conservative direction. And you need to keep an eye on those two, invest in them early, because they're going to do a great job. But the real difference between House and Senate members, you met these guys, I think you would agree, either one of them, anybody, either one of these House members, like the other 100 members or so that I serve with, could be governor one day if they wanted to. I mean, really, if you meet them like Glenn Mulready, they're talented, they're gifted. The difference between them and the Senate is the state senators, they all know they'll be governor one day. That's the real difference. That's a joke I like to take a little poke at the Senate. But out of the States' Rights Committee, we saw real legislation that empowers the states to act within its constitutional authority. And one of the pieces of legislation that we saw come out of there was the nullification of Obamacare. It came out of the committee, came to the House floor, and it passed overwhelmingly out of the House of Representatives last year, recognizing that the states must act. If we do not, it is our constitutional authority that if we do not act, the federal government will not stay reined in. They will not stay within its limited enumerated powers that are given to it under the United States Constitution. It will continue to encroach more and more and more. The second thing that I think is so important for the state government to do, if we're going to continue to have a limited government, is to make sure that we do our part to reduce and to say no and reject more debt. we continue to cripple our future generations with more and more debt. And I will tell you, when I first got elected, I thought I will not vote for any debt unless there's a really good reason to do it. The challenge is that I found out once I was elected, there are always good reasons to pull out the credit card. There's always a good reason to add more debt to the state. And you're hearing about it. You pick up the Tulsa World or the Daily Oklahoman, and right now we have a Capitol that needs to be repaired. We have a Capitol building that is in need of repair. Last year, we passed a pay-as-you-go plan that would have paid for with tax dollars, but it would have done it without any bond indebtedness. This year, I think we may be looking at a very different scenario because many politicians have decided that we have to take out the taxpayer's credit card to pay for it. I don't think we do. I believe we can pay for it as a pay-as-you-go plan and not strapping more debt onto our young people and future generations. The other thing I found out is speaking, I'll cut it off, Dave. I know you got to move on. I feel like if Jonathan Smalls is coming, I feel a lot like John the Baptist. There's one greater than me coming, so I will keep it short. But the other thing I found out when I became Speaker of the House that I did not know is that every single thing about state government, whether it's the relationship that committee chairs have with state agencies, or it's the way that the staff gives you numbers, everything in state government is designed for it to grow. It is designed to grow and get bigger and bigger every single year. And you can have the most conservative legislature that you name. You can have 101 constitutional House of Representative members in the State House of Representatives and 48 senators that feel and think exactly the same, but the bureaucracy is still designed to grow. If there is not somebody in the room standing up, screaming on their head, saying, no, we're not going to get bigger, we're not going to grow, it will continue to grow. So I will tell you, when you have those leaders, like you have, like Senator Dahl, like Tom Newell, like the two senators that were here, David Holt, when you have advocates for limited government, support them, get behind them, write checks to them, make sure that they get reelected, because if you don't, they will get run over very quickly. They have to have support from the grassroots because, again, the machine is so big and so powerful. It is designed to grow. Groups like Club for Growth, what they do to keep the electorate informed, like the 912 Project. What you do, I was at a 912 Project meeting just this past week, and I listened as they talked about votes that were coming up in the House and in the Senate. And it is so important that you have groups that are keeping people informed because, again, it is designed to just grow and grow. And the last thing I will say is to recognize that around any conglomeration of power, like state government or federal government, there is a culture that develops. And it is a very seductive culture that develops of power, where people are intent on growing the troughs. And one of the reasons that happens, we have 101 different state agencies and boards that govern the state of Oklahoma. And guess what all of them have in common? They all have a public affairs officer who's out there rallying support for the machine to get bigger. And every year, you're hearing about it getting bigger and bigger. And what you're doing as the conservatives and the advocates for limited government is so important because, again, we may be in the minority, but we can be louder, we can be stronger, and we can be just as organized as a state agency. So I will cut it off there and just say, again, recognizing that when 1 out of every $3 that we make as working people goes to some government tax or fee, that's enough. That's enough. That's more than enough for state government and the federal government to do all that it needs to do. So thank you for being that voice in the wall, for being that voice crying in the wilderness. Because again, I think the day of reckoning is coming, both in state government and in federal government. And in the end, I believe the good guys, like those that are in this room, are going to win because we know that we cannot continue down the road that we've been going because it is unsustainable. So thank you for being that voice crying in the wilderness, and know that you have advocates out there. I don't know if it's appropriate to cut it off now, Dave, or answer questions or whatever's appropriate, but we'll cut it off there. Thank you.